Hi, everyone, and welcome to our usual Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle,
And
along
I
with,
thought that you were going to say Mushtaq Ali and try and leave me hanging here.
oh, not
Because I
today.
am the actual, real, genuine, accept no substitutes Mushtaq Ali, coming to you from beautiful downtown, wherever the hell I am with all this noise.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us live or on the replay. We are very happy to have you. And as usual, we do need to do our spiel.
Is that my cue?
Sure is. Go for it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and any clowns in the audience. That's for you, Sean, wherever you are tonight. Welcome to our channel. Welcome to our regular Sunday talk. This is something that we do, as the title implies, every Sunday. And it is a way to let you sit in on what might be a class at the Nine-Sided Circle and even participate should you want. This is a bit of guerrilla theater in some ways. And you're invited, you're even encouraged, perhaps even coerced into joining us. And since you're here, I would invite you to subscribe to our channel. We are sneaking up on that 1,000 subscribers mark, and I can't hardly wait. I look like 5 times a day to see who's subscribed.
We're so close.
We're
We've come so
close.
far.
And it's amazing because I never expected to get more than like 100 subscribers to this channel. And the reason, though, it's not that we are desperate to get 1,000 subscribers. It's because once we do that, we can put an end to those commercials that show up uninvited on our videos, and just make your lives a little bit tidier where you don't have to deal with that. And it would really help us if you subscribed, and it would really, really help us if you liked our videos. If you hit that little like button, there's usually 300-400 people watch these videos, and we get 25 likes, and I'm assuming that the rest of you don't hate it. So think about hitting the like button. Tell Google's algorithm that we're cool and they should promote us. Do we have any other announcements besides that, Nora?
Yeah, I think not. I think you covered all the bases.
Hot dang.
Well, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
So
Back
this
to you.
time, why, thank you. We are a little bit charged up this evening because we are going to talk about something that is, again, not quite the same as last week, but again, a topic relevant to the moment, to the times we find ourselves in. And that is Sufism 2.0 and Open-Source Enlightenment. So, that's a bit techy, but we're going to unpack what we mean by that as the talk unravels. Yes.
And some of us are geeks here, so.
So it works, yeah. Yes, it's a good metaphor for the times.
Is that my cue?
Yes.
You sure you don't want to take this one?
I feel like I'm a little distracted right now, but as we go, I'm going to get right there with you.
Is that because of there is heavy construction going on outside of our domicile today? It's been going on all day, in between the people driving by with their incredibly large speakers, the kind that you have to remove the trunk of your car to put in, blasting it incredibly loud, usually was something that I wouldn't choose to listen to otherwise.
They want us all to enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah.
The
But
whole
if any
goddamn
of that drifts
neighborhood.
if any of that drifts in on this recording, our apologies. But we live in the real world, or the unreal world. We live in the world where construction goes on.
There you go. Right. So Sufism 2.0.
Okay. So what was Sufism 1.0? That was the very early Sufism. This was back in the days when like Bayezid Bastami is an example of this. They were really concerned about whether or not God would forgive them their sins and let them into heaven. And this was at a time when um, basically, if you became a Muslim and you did, the whole confession of faith and you followed the rules, you were guaranteed to get into heaven. So that's all you had to do, and that was it. There was the end times, and then you were in heaven, and that was it. Sufis of that time were kind of like they were the ones who wanted to get into heaven and be given the heavenly library card. They wanted
Heavenly
to,
library card.
yeah, they wanted a little bit more interaction. They didn't want to just sit around telling God how cool he was. They wanted to do a little bit more learning when they were there. So that was Sufism 1.0, and it produced some interesting people, but it evolved. Sufism 1.5 was kind of a different thing. Uh, we became a hierarchy. You get thinkers like Rumi and Abdul Qadir Jilani and
Ibn
Ibn
Arabi.
Arabi. That's the guy I was looking for in my head.
Yeah. These are
Sometimes
like,
the
yeah,
brain is like a maze. I've noticed it's like the thought is there, but you have to go around a little bit to find it.
you gotta fetch it.
Gotta fetch it. Yes. So now these guys, they were coming to the conclusion that there was something besides just sitting in heaven, hanging out, looking at God, telling him how cool he is. They they realized that that in itself was a form of separation, and they wanted to get beyond that. And each of them had their own way to do it. And what came out of that were what we think of now as the Sufi orders. So that is a series of uh, teachers who assume an authority position and then tell everybody what to do. This is classic Sufism. This is you join the Sufi order, and as they say, you are to your sheikh as a corpse in the corpse washer's hands. That was a classic saying. You're completely passive. You do whatever they do, and that gets you to this idea of fana, or annihilation in God. It worked well in sometimes in some places, and it failed miserably in others. And in a sense, as we evolve as a society and as cultures, it's doomed to fail because it creates a hierarchical situation. And there's this thing that happens. There's an old saying from economics. It goes back to the Middle Ages, I think, or to at least the Renaissance. Bad coin drives out good. And so what that meant was here you have two gold pieces, one of which has been debased, one of which is pure. But you can take the debased one to the store and buy the same amount with it as the pure one because people aren't checking. And that goes on in economics all the time. And so if the king striketh two coins, one debased and one pure, the debased will drive out the pure. In the same way, Sufi teachers who don't actually know shit, but know how to run a group and create a cult of personality will drive out the real thing. And we've seen that more and more over the last 100 years or so, especially here in America, but not just here in America. I could name names, but I don't want to embarrass anybody. But we don't need cults of personality in Sufism. There was one Sufi teacher. Everybody was the corpse in his hands, completely passive, obeying him at every turn. And I used to go and hang out with this group because I wanted to see what was going on with them. I was looking for a new teacher, and so I checked around a lot. And I had a lot of good friends in this group. And one of the things that happened was the first thing that happened was that one friend of mine and his girlfriend decided to get married. They were both his dervishes. So they go off, they get married, and the next day they've split up because the guy finds out that uh, the night before the wedding, the sheikh was sleeping with the bride. There's a in European terms they call it droit de seigneur, the right of the Lord over all of the women. And it was a sort of that kind of thing. And it went downhill from there. Uh, and that's happened more often than we would like to think of. And that is the ultimate negative outcome of Sufism 1.5, the creation of hierarchical structures where the person at the top is not accountable to anybody.
And it dumps everyone down. People
Yeah,
don't have to stand in their own authority. They just have to submit.
yep. And this is not just Sufis, this is everywhere. You know, there was the 16, he was at the time the 16-year-old enlightened guru guy from India who rode around on motorcycles and used to say, your mind bothers you? Give it to me. It won't bother me. And all of his followers thought that that was a cool thing. I heard that and it's like, never get this guy near me. Somebody who wants to own my mind so I don't have to be bothered with it is not my friend.
He dressed in, friendly, warm
Oh yeah, it
garb,
was
so
very
to
friendly.
speak.
Yeah, it was totally. He was very nice about it. Just give me your mind. I'll
Like it's a
take care of it.
mercy to you. I'm going
Yeah,
to take care of you. So you don't have to take care of yourself,
yeah.
basically.
And then you have like the Nexium people, right? Keith Raniere, very nice looking guy, seemed to be very cool, and he basically did his best to own those people. And they fell for it for a while, and then they stopped, and everything turned bad for them. But that's we don't need to go into that. But that is the end outcome of the hierarchical spiritual schools. So you don't hierarchies no longer serve us. The king is dead. Long live nobody. So Sufism 2.0 is Sufism without kings, where uh, nobody is above the rules. Nobody is above the law. Nobody can't be held accountable for their behavior. And at the same time, the structure is organized horizontally rather than vertically. Are there people who know more than other people? Yes. Are they, because of that knowledge, somehow special? No. What is their purpose? Their purpose is to help the people who are interested get the information and the tools that they need to wake themselves up. Nothing more than that. No taking on people's karma, no telling people what they have to do, no, oh, gee, you want to be a Sufi? Then you must accept me as your master. We do not use the M word in any form at all. What this means, though, is that the people who come to join Sufism 2.0 have to be adults. They cannot come as children because children need a parental figure or two to boss them around. Keep them from doing silly shit like jumping off the roof. Adults don't need this. We've already figured out that jumping off the roof is probably not a great idea unless you're doing parkour, and that's a different story. So, when I refer to Sufism 2.0, I am referring to teaching without masters, where the entire group works together at whatever capacity they have at that moment to further the teaching for everyone, including the person or people who are taking the role of teacher. Yes, Ramon.
Ramon said, I enjoyed jumping off the roof as a kid. And I said, sounds about right for you, Ramon. Yes, that does seem like something a rebellious kid like Ramon would be up to.
Oh, yeah. And kids do that, especially boy kids, because at certain points, they suffer from testosterone poisoning. I did this. I can remember the day that me and my buddy, we went out to this place and there was a dry creek bed with really soft sand. So we got up about 5 feet and jumped off and landed. And it was cool. So we tried 6 feet. We tried 8 feet. We tried 10 feet. I did 12 feet and sprained my ankle.
Ouch.
And that
Yeah.
was like, you can only find your limits when you go a little bit beyond them. That was a perfect example of that. And I think I was like 8.
Silly 8-year-olds
Yeah.
spraining your ankles. So we are making a distinction here between what is essentially a role of what some people would call eldership and being a master. Those are two very different things, at least
Yeah.
in the context in which we're using them.
Yeah. If you use mastery in the sense of you have mastered your craft, that's a different thing
Yeah,
altogether. This is
absolutely.
not that.
This is not that. No. And we've talked about being a master in the context of
Yeah.
running a workshop. We had that talk we did about the metaphor of being an artist who runs an artist workshop, and you have the master who has the skill sets that he, she, or they are passing down to apprentices who will then go on to become masters themselves in their own right, ideally.
Inshallah.
Yes.
Yes. But that's the kind of mastership that we are not talking about today. We're talking about mastering the art of not having to work because you can get other people to do it for you.
Yes, as Ramon suggests, being the master of a skill set, not a master over you, meaning over someone else, over the peons beneath you who are expected to bend to your whim.
Yep. So, what this means is you have to create community, and the community has to be in a community of adults. Now, these adults might help people who have not reached adulthood yet to grow up. It's possible, but that's not the job of the community. That might be its hobby. The work of the community is waking yourself up. When you have woken up and you are adult, you have stepped away from the childish conditioning that you have suffered from. That's it. You've got it. And then ideally, you help others to continue exploring as you continue exploring yourself.
So again, we need to distinguish between being an adult and being awake.
Yes.
Yes, and we've done a talk about that, so we can put a towards the
We
end.
will
But
refer y'all to all of this stuff
yeah,
because I don't want to rehash it. We're
we're,
probably going to run late just talking about this.
so becoming an adult ideally comes first. That gives
Yes.
you a foundation of good, stable sense of self that you know how to handle in a mature way so that you are doing the best you can to benefit yourself and others. You've got
Yeah.
that stuff down. And then when you wake up, you're able to apply that in all the more conscious, in the now sort of way.
Yeah. I liken it to the Japanese martial arts belt system. So you have all of these pretty colors of belt between white belt and brown belt. And the rank is called Q. Q means child, basically. So if you're first Q, or you're like ultimate beginner. Once you get up to as high in brown belt as you get, and you take that qualitative step across the threshold from brown belt to black belt, you stop being Q, like eighth Q or whatever, and you start being Dan. Dan represents a student, someone who can now learn. It's the same thing with the work. The beginning of the work is to move you from childhood to adulthood. After that, you can be a student. You cannot learn the work as a child. You can learn to grow up using the techniques of the work. You can learn to move into human adulthood using the techniques of the work, after which you are ready to do the things you need to do to continue on the path. But the path doesn't actually start until you achieve human adulthood, until you've broken your childish conditioning. Does that make sense? I mean, you don't have to agree with this. I could be full of shit. This is entirely possible. Um, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not.
So in this community, everyone ideally, as you say, would be at a point of having done the work thus far to have become an adult,
Yes.
with a few aspirants maybe thrown in there.
Yeah. Think of it in the same way as the old guilds, where you had in the Turkish guilds, you had the fetch and carry kids. They were the kids who hung around the guild and were sent off to do errands and deliver stuff and such. They weren't members of the guild yet, but they got to absorb some of the guild stuff to discover whether or not they wanted to be members. Amanda, I do not know this person. So,
Ooh, we have a question from McQueen.
yes,
Yeah, hey,
yeah,
I've heard commonly the beginning of the real walking on the path corresponds to some kind of a complete breakdown, a mental or emotional breakdown, forcing you to basically say, "There's nothing in this world for me. I'm going to go looking for something beyond."
yeah. I'm not sure that that has to be the case. Um, as a matter of fact, that's one way to get there. But the other way to get there is to go, you know what? This world is absolutely wonderful, and I would really love to experience it more deeply. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually had the same thought. I just wanted to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah, I don't think that the mass people are motivated by pain. You know, if
Mm.
you want to get somebody to move, set their shoes on fire. But it doesn't have to be that way.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be. What's that usually called? Like a spiritual crisis kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't find that we all go through that. Just reflecting. Did I have one? I mean, it was maybe in like a prolonged exploratory sort of way, but it wasn't like this breakdown moment kind of thing. So
Yeah.
everybody's
And I
different.
never had one of those.
Yeah.
Not I can't remember even once. What I had instead was the sense that I was living around people who were completely disconnected from each other in reality all the time. You're walking in a zombie apocalypse and nobody notices.
That's fair too, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. So, any other
Horror of the
questions? Yeah.
situation.
Chris, what?
Oh, I was just saying the horror of the situation, or the is
Yeah.
it the yeah the is it the horror or the terror of the situation, Mushtak?
I think it's usually translated as the horror of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, everybody around me is asleep. And I remember, God, was it Twilight Zone or something? Somebody found the Shangri-La, and there were all of these really wonderful people who had no eyes. They were blind, just flat across the eyes. And so the guy who found them, he had eyes, and he realized that all of these people had eyes underneath these skin coverings, and you could surgically open it up and they could see. And when he suggested that, they tried to burn him at the stake. Somehow there was a metaphor in there somewhere. Anyway,
What is that from?
I think that it was from Twilight Zone. I mean, I saw this as a kid,
Yeah.
so
So it's
I
kind of like this
remember it
distant
in,
dream. Yeah.
yeah, in beautiful black and white.
Ah,
And I remember all of the people with no eyes, and it was kind of creepy until I realized some years later, oh, I'm living in that world, of course.
And what's that line about the horror of the situation from?
Some crazy ass German philosopher, English, who knows? Somebody who discovered the horror of the situation.
Also, I thought that the spiritual breakdown was more likely to happen when somebody had been doing spiritual stuff for a while.
well, that has been said as well. That you have some kind of breakthrough and your world shatters. Yeah, maybe that can happen.
Yeah. So, back to Sufism 2.0, because I want to get into open source enlightenment. Um, every indicator points to this being a tiny little time, a tiny little space in the timeline where this can happen. And I see a lot of people from different disciplines moving towards this. This is, this is my bright idea of how to explain it. Other people have been having other ideas, and I've been really paying attention to some of them. Coming up, even people who I didn't think much of before have been coming up with stuff that make me go, damn, they've experienced something that has transformed them. And it tends to come out into some version of Sufism 2.0 from whatever filter they have. So, Does everybody here understand what open source means?
Yeah.
How many computer geeks do we have?
The
Yeah,
Queen's one of them. We have a few, yes.
yeah. So, most people, when they buy a computer, it's either running the Microsoft operating system or it's running the Apple operating system, the Macintosh system, whatever it is these days. These are commercial systems controlled by somebody else. But you have a third choice, which is to get an open source system, which consists of various forms of Unix and Linux that are available to anybody. Most people buy a Linux package now where somebody has written an interface that allows you to have a graphical user interface and all this kind of stuff and makes it easy for non-Unix geeks to use. Linux was based on Unix. But open source means that all of the code is available to you. Here you have this operating system and it works really well. And you can customize it to suit your needs. And it doesn't cost you any money if you know how to code, or you can hire other people to write code for you. Or other people will write code and put it up for you to use, which is much more likely. So the idea of open source is democratizing software
I see you
in this case.
unmuted, Chris.
I just want to bring up the fact within this open source context is like the freedom of forking.
Yes,
You know, that you'll fork the code at different points, and it's very clear where that happens.
yes, and that's absolutely the case. And what happens is some people make the system better. Other people make the system worse. This gets very Darwinian in some levels because the code that goes bad disappears. You know, it goes extinct. The code that is good continues. And everybody works together as a group. And it's not just for operating systems. These days, most of the programs that I run are open source. I mean, I still run Photoshop, but I own a copy of Photoshop back when they still sold it, as opposed to let you lease it for huge amounts of money a month. Because I'm so familiar with Photoshop and Illustrator, I still use those. But I am just as likely to use GIMP instead of Photoshop, which is an open source graphics program, which is as powerful as Photoshop, is improving every day because of a dedicated user base that is coding for it. And I am just as likely to use Inkscape as I am to use Adobe Illustrator now. And rather than using the Adobe products for doing my graphic stuff, if I want, or for my video stuff, if I want to get crazy, I will use Davinci Resolve, which is freeware. They aren't entirely open source, but they are freeware and they listen to people. You can pay money for more sophisticated stuff, but people make multi-million-dollar movies using the free version of Davinci Resolve. It's that good. All of this stuff is available. I don't use Microsoft Word anymore. I use LibreOffice, which does all of the same wonderful stuff, but is open source freeware that is supported by a community. The techniques that we use need to become freeware. You notice we put up all sorts of stuff on the Enneagram on this channel. Basically, we are creating freeware Enneagram. The people who do all of these $500,000 Enneagram courses do not own any of the material. They're like, God, what's that guy's name? He used to tell people how to get rich. Find a book in the public domain and republish it with a commentary and sell it for lots of money.
Chris, did you have a thought? I saw you unmute yourself.
No, no, it's just that's just terrible.
Yeah. And so what you have with the present Enneagram community is, one, they don't have a clue how to use the software.
Not
They're,
really.
no,
Yeah.
they don't. They are the people who use their computer to look at Facebook and send email, maybe send email. Do people still do email?
Originally.
Yeah. And they don't actually know how to use the computer. So what we have been doing for the last couple of years is putting up open source freeware Enneagram material that anybody can watch and learn from for no money at all. And they can use it, just like I use GIMP to do some of my graphics, or I use LibreOffice to write my material. The techniques of the work have to become this. They can't be hidden behind a paywall. Now, how do these communities support themselves? Through donation, strangely enough. LibreOffice tells you, you know, we really love this. We are going to stick to it and make this better and better. And it would really help if you could send us a little money if you can afford to. And I do. I send them money every time they do an update. I'll send them a few dollars just to help them keep going. And it's a whole lot better than dropping $500 on the same software from Microsoft. And Bill Gates doesn't need any more money. He really doesn't. So, open sourcing and freewaring the techniques of the work is going to be part of what has to happen. And there will always be people who think, well, gee, I could just make millions of dollars doing this. And they will go the way of the dinosaur. They already have. They just haven't noticed yet.
Say more about that. Like, because it sucks.
Well, because it sucks, because it is not worth much, and it doesn't produce what they promise. You know, you have these self-help gurus who tell you, I will show you how to be a multimillionaire in a year. And 99.99% of the people who go through their courses aren't multimillionaires at the end of that year. The only person getting rich off of that is the guy who's doing the seminars, maybe his cronies. But it's almost like a pyramid scheme. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying it's almost like that. This is unsustainable. Right now, to my sense of the spiritual marketplace is like swimming through shark-infested waters. You twitch the wrong way and somebody is going to want to take a bite out of you. And they're all waiting out there. They all have the great program. It's all very shiny, sparkly even. And all they want is your money and your heart and your mind. And that's not sustainable anymore if we want to grow as human beings, let alone grow as a society. It's always going to be more popular. Think about it. Most people would rather go to a museum and look at an exhibit and maybe a little demonstration than actually go out into the real world and see the things for themselves. Nora and I, the last time we were in LA, went to, what was the museum we went to?
Did we go in the Natural History Museum?
Yeah, we went to the Natural History Museum. And we were in the African animal section. And I'm walking through and I'm looking at all of these dusty, moth-eaten, stuffed animals sitting there with glass eyes. And I'm remembering what the real ones look like, because when I was living in Tanzania, I would go out and look at the real animals. And a stuffed elephant doesn't look anything like an actual elephant. A stuffed lion doesn't look anything like an actual lion. They're just a poor approximation. And the paintings behind them do not look anything like the Serengeti. I'm sorry, just don't. Totally different experiences. But most people will only ever go to the museum. They won't go out into Serengeti because that's dangerous. And it's mostly dangerous to your conditioning. Experiencing the real world is, it's an awakening sort of situation. But
If, uh,
the museums offer you a simulation of that in the safety of your own reality tunnel. Right? You can go to Konya and pay a few dollars and watch the dervishes whirl, listen to the pretty music. But you could go to Konya and apply for admission into the Mevlevi order and spend a couple of years learning how to do the turn yourself and actually experience it rather than watching it as a performance. Nothing wrong with watching it as a performance.
But you're
I
only going to
watched it.
get, yeah, you
Yeah,
watched it, but you're only going to get a whiff of the real thing,
yeah,
if that. Yeah.
yeah.
Nancy, were you going to say something?
yeah, I was noticing a contradiction, which is that first Mushtaq said that eventually the fake teachers are going to fade away. They're like the dinosaurs who are going to die, and 2.0 is going to take over. And
No,
then
I
you
never
said,
said 2.0 is going to take over. Don't put words in my mouth there.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said the bad stuff was going to end.
No, the bad stuff is going to be with us forever. If I
Okay,
am,
that's the second
if
thing
I,
you said.
yeah, if you have misunderstood me, it's not your fault though. It's my fault for expressing myself poorly.
At this point, I'm not sure exactly what you said, so it could be either
Neither am
way.
I.
Yeah.
I make this stuff up as I go along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am curious about. Apparently, there are other groups who are taking a non-authoritarian approach.
Yes, that's I mentioned those people. They're out there. They're doing their version of 2.0
Mhm.
or 3.0 or whatever they want to call it. Jamie Weil is calling it 3.0 these days. I just ran across his book a few days ago and went, why haven't I read this when it came out? It came out over a year ago.
Amy Wheel, yeah.
Yeah, good book. I
What's
used
the
to
book
not like
again?
him. I can't even remember the name of it. It's the author who did Rise of Superman with Stephen Kotler. Or was it Stealing Fire? One of the first two books.
Mm.
He's part of the Flow Genome Program. Smart guy. But I don't want to get too lost in that.
So what we're talking about is not necessarily something that's going to wipe out what has already been, but what is kind of like an upswelling.
Yeah. And Ramon says, Stealing Fire. Thank you, Ramon. Good book, by the way. The museum Sufis, in all of their various different ways, will always be with us. Sufism 2.0, as I think that I said, and if I didn't, I should, and I will now, is never going to take over the world because it's too damn hard. You have to be an adult to do this. You can't just be a kid. It's like Christianity versus the teachings of Jesus, right? You go and you listen to Jesus and he says, give up everything that you own. Do not look for, even to feed yourself, trust in the one to give you everything that you need. Look at the lilies of the field, how beautifully they're clothed. Will not your Father in heaven clothe you just as well or even better? But nobody wants to give up everything. Nobody wanted to follow what he taught. So Paul comes along after him and says, no, dude, everybody misunderstood Jesus. And let me tell you, I know I didn't meet him ever in his lifetime, but he came to me in a vision and explained everything. And all you have to do is say the magic words and you get to go into heaven. Poof, just like that. Oh yeah, and you have to do whatever I tell you to do because I am now speaking for the Lord. And he
And
stops being
yeah,
that incredibly cool radical rabbi from Palestine and starts becoming the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And
Jesus
Jesus
does.
wept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the stuff that has gone before will always be there. But there is a window of possibility for Sufism 2.0 to become much stronger than it has been in the last 150 years, to actually make a difference, to build up enough impetus to make some changes in the world, just so that more people can get on the path of waking up and becoming adult and doing the real work should they want to. Does that make more sense, Nancy? Am I being more clear? Or, yeah, she's still here, so she hasn't given up on me and thrown her hands up in the air. Anyway, I'll keep
It's
talking until Nancy
Nancy. Yeah.
answers. Yeah. So, the techniques of human adulthood and waking up are relatively simple. Not necessarily easy, but simple. And more people are teaching them in whatever way they understand them, which is great because the world definitely needs it. For us, it starts with the breath practices for any number of reasons, and we're going to talk about that at length sometime in the not too distant future. The breath practices are our starting point, and it gives us the tools to do everything else. And everybody who has worked with me will know that they'll say, how do I handle this? And I'll say, be in your breath. Do your breath practice. That's usually the first thing. And there are a whole bunch of other tools. And they need to be put out there in a clear and concise way. Oh, okay, thank you, Nancy. I was worried. Nancy says, it was clear. I just forgot to unmute myself. I can understand that. Sometimes I probably should mute myself, but this is not one of those times.
All right. So you were talking about breath practice and how
Yeah,
that's the starting point when people come to us and say, I have a problem.
yeah. And most of the breath practices that actually work are kept behind a paywall right now.
It's wild to me.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you look really hard, you can find some of them. But most of them, you go to breath workshops and you pay, $500 for an afternoon to have somebody tell you what you can find for free. So, this is one reason why we have at various times talked about breath practice as something to do. people can actually go through our channel or a number of different places now, thank God, and find how to do the breath practice in a way that will work for them and will actually create the changes that they're looking for. Embodiment is incredibly important. The breath is the doorway to the body. Once you get there, there are all sorts of cool things that you can do that will move you along the path. All of these things can be open sourced, and all of them can be put out as freeware.
So, I mean, we have people who say, people don't want things that they don't have to struggle to get or to have something painful to prod them towards it.
Yeah, that's not our target audience
Yeah,
when it comes right down to it. Yeah, some people don't want to do that. That's not the people who we work with. Look at the people who are here. None of the people who are here, well, everybody here has had pain in their lives. But that pain is not driving them to be here. They're not here going, fix me.
right. And they're not saying, oh, it's not worth it if I don't pay $500 to get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and people pay us to work with them, to train them in how to use these tools. And that's great. And you can get a lot of what we're doing for free in our videos. Now, we've randomized that because basically we talk each week about whatever we feel like talking about. There is not a particular order to this. So you might have to jump around, but we have created playlists so that you can go through and kind of organize things more.
Yeah. And again, that touches on the fact that some people feel there need to be gatekeepers in order to keep things safe against misuse.
Yeah, which is why we only work with adults. Gatekeepers are needed for children. Adults don't need gatekeepers. And the work is dangerous. It is. You run the risk of doing things that could potentially hurt you if you did them wrong. This is why we need community. Because we can look out for each other. Noor and I look out for each other every day. In so many ways, it isn't even funny. I pretty much credit her with what little sanity I have. It's her fault.
Yeah, we do that for each other.
Yeah. And our community helps us all with this. I mean, Ramon and I, and Chris and I talk about wild, crazy, radical things in ways that probably would never get on one of these videos because, especially in Chris's case, they tend to be kind of, not niche, but they take things in a particular direction and then run really far out with them. And Ramon and I do the same thing. We sit around and talk for a couple hours about stuff. I learn from him. He learns from me. We have a good time. That's how it's supposed to work. So, Sufism 2.0, no masters, no slaves. No deferring your autonomy to somebody else because adults have autonomy. That is one of the ultimate hallmarks of being an adult human being is you are autonomous. You don't need somebody to be responsible for you. You can make your own damn choices.
You don't need a teacher that's going to give you a slap on the wrist when you've been bad, in this sense of like, did you do the practices that, I shared with you that I hope would benefit you and have a sense that they might? It's not really my responsibility to do that.
Yeah.
You get to do whatever you will with the information you've been given.
Yeah. And we've had these conversations with people. Somebody comes and says, I'm struggling with this. And I say, try this and do it every day like this. And they come back next week and they're going, I'm having trouble with this. And I go, did you do the practice that I gave you? And they go, oh, I forgot about it. No, I didn't have time. No, the kids were making too much noise. That was probably Jayesh having to go. I hate that we're missing him. So, let's democratize enlightenment. Stay tuned to this channel for more. So that's pretty much what I have to say about it tonight. Any questions? Probably a lot of questions. Don't know if I have any answers.
And questions are welcome.
Yeah.
Mushtaq,
Yes.
in thinking about the democratizing enlightenment, it seems like in a way it's democratizing enlightenment technology, and then
Yeah.
it's like up to the people to decide if how they use it.
That's exactly it. We want to democratize and open source the technology, make it freeware, and arrange for people to have a possibility of creating community. They don't even have to be part of this community. I
Right.
don't care.
It's not about us,
Yeah.
It's
No,
about
you take
the
the technology. Yeah, you go out, you work it, you wake up. If it works, you help your friends. Go, hey, I tried this. It worked. Once you have 3 or 4 of you together, you got community. And then you help each other.
But I mean, that's another thing too, is that you invite people into it and they can, in accordance with their own autonomy, choose to participate or move on to something else. I mean, you can share what you have that has worked for you, but in the end, you can't pressure people to do those things. And you may not have all the answers, so you need to take that into account.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you must take that into account because there is always the risk of forming a group around a charismatic leader.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is this sense of like fads or people who have like snake oil fixes and stuff. We're not trying to create communities that kind of crystallize around things like that.
No, as a matter of fact, that is anathema to what we are doing.
Right. So Mr. Keen says, since Sufism 2.0 needs adults to be performed by adults, I think, who or where are the kids expected to learn from?
They're
Who do they
expected to
need
learn
to
from
learn
the
from?
adults. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, they have to learn from the adults. Children cannot teach children how to be adults. If children try and teach children how to be adults, you often get Lord of the Flies. Look at any street gang and you see kids trying to teach themselves how to be adults and failing miserably. So, we're not saying that people who are working on human adulthood are excluded. We're
Yeah,
saying
I'm
that
glad
they
you're
need
saying
to
that.
be encouraged and given the tools to do the work to bring themselves to human adulthood. And the adults have to help them with that. And that's different than the adult work. Again, I use the martial arts example of here you have all of these black belts in the school, and part of their duties are to train the kids, to train the people who are coming up, to work with them, help them, do all of this kind of stuff, so that they too may earn their black belt in 10 weeks or less for only $5,000. Sorry, McDojo thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think one thing that's important to remember is that one of the best ways, probably the only really good way, is to lead by example.
Yep.
And when it comes to children or people who have not yet reached what we're calling human adulthood here, if that's not something they're interested in, what can you do about that? You really can't do much except live your own life and lead by example. And
yeah, a certain percentage of those people will have something happen that will make them want more. A lot
yeah,
of them won't, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with the idea that most people are perfectly content to be asleep. We've talked about this before. The whole concept of the goddess Maya is she is the greatest of goddesses because her job is to give her followers good dreams. And that's what most people want.
yeah, yep, we have to respect that.
Yeah.
That's critical. So, McQueen, I see you have your hand up. You have a question or a thought?
Yeah, just a comment about the open source community and what a great metaphor this is for the situation as you see it. I know that people tend to find they need a chunk of technology, they will go and get it, and then there are these groups of people who discuss the technology, and there's these chat rooms, and there's the people in there who are old crusty experts, and they don't actually want to talk very much, and if you get through to them, they're usually angry. And you get these dumb people who come in there and say, my thing's broken, and they don't tell you anything about it. And all the people in between, they have to learn how to deal with these people and figure out the systems, and they become more mature and educated as they all work together in the service of really serving that tool, the technology, and the community itself.
That is a really good, really important point. And it's absolutely true. Every piece of software that I mentioned has a community like that. You get on their forum and you can get help from people who know more than you. And sometimes you're going to be annoying. And most of the time they'll put up with you because they were once annoying as well. Maybe just weeks ago.
Well, I mean, that's a sign of adulthood, right? Of human adulthood is to be able to, in reason, indulge those questions and to be patient.
Yeah. And like I said, that's close to a perfect metaphor. And so we could say that Sufism 2.0 is the forum and chat room for all of this technology from our point of view, from the point of view of artists of this direction. And that would not be a unreasonable metaphor for it.
Yeah, so thanks, McQueen. That's really juicy. Chris, I
Call
see
on
you
people.
unmuted again. I'm going to start calling on people who haven't spoken
Yeah.
yet, so warm yourselves up for that. You're all set, Chris? I'm going to say yes.
Yes, here we go. Hi.
Hi.
So Nine-Sided Circle is contributing to the commons by providing these free and open source. And
That's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about like what kind of commons. Is it the information commons? Is it the knowledge commons? People are throwing around the word wisdom commons, which I'm not so sure on, but what would be the classification of commons if we had to play that game? You think?
Good question.
It's on our mood, I guess. depending on the day.
Yeah, maybe a bit of all of those or something.
Yeah,
There's
I mean,
several, not
honestly,
all of them.
yeah.
You know, we have our niche, but I'm not sure what it is yet. Let me think about that. Let Noor think about that, and we'll come up with an answer at some point.
Ramon says,
I
"What's
know
your
the answer. I want to be the guy who sweeps the comments. So
Yeah.
Ramon said,
Ramon asks, "What's your opinion on potentially dangerous technology? Technology that has the ability to be abused."
oh, you mean technology?
Mm,
Yeah, all technology is dangerous. All technology has the possibility of abuse. This is why the first thing you do is you need to become a human adult. You need to have your own autonomy. You need to know your shit. And you need to have completely installed the idea I do not defer to anybody. If I catch somebody who I'm working with deferring to me, they're in trouble.
yeah. He does no feet kissing here, no ring
Yeah.
kissing here. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's abuse is going to happen. We see really smart people get abused. I mean, look at the people who got screwed over by Nexium. There are no chumps in that group.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's one thing they're very keen to make sure that people understand about themselves and about people who find themselves in a similar situation is that they're not stupid. They're not incapable human beings. And yet, even, quote, even they got wrapped up in things that were surprisingly unmooring for them. And they thought it was a good thing. I mean, that's one thing they always say, right? Oh, I
yeah,
thought this was a good thing.
yeah. And they didn't discover the bad thing under the good thing for a while. The thing is that now, because they are speaking out and they are teaching and they are discussing this in the public forum in the commons, um, people are getting inoculated against the kind of shit that was used against them. They're like the guys who went out and caught the pox, and then they come back and they have a natural immunity that they've developed, and they're sharing it with other people so that you can develop an immunity without having to catch the disease.
Oh, don't get the pox if you can
Don't
help
get the
it.
pox. Yeah.
Nonetheless, yeah, you can inoculate yourself spiritually and intellectually by
Yeah.
knowing what is out there.
Yeah. That's why the other day in the forum I said every spiritual group on the planet should have a copy of Combating Cult Mind Control in its library because that will,
While yeah,
yeah, yeah,
while also reading that itself critically, so that
yes,
you don't end up with this weird groupthink around the material itself too.
yeah. So, yes, the work is inherently dangerous. There is the potential for abuse. It is the responsibility of each and every one of us to monitor ourselves and our friends. Nor has permission to shoot me in the head if she ever finds me going into full on cult stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, we both talked about that. We both know um, there are stress points for each of us, and we need to be conscious of those so that we don't get too wrapped up in them to the point where they start to rule us and take us in directions of abusing the the relative degree of influence we may have.
Yeah. As they say in the Quran, sinning against ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the worst sin.
Does that answer your question, or would you like to unmute and elaborate a little more? You're definitely welcome to do that.
Yeah. But while I was thinking about it, let's check somebody else out.
He's unmuted though.
It's okay. It's okay. You guys can go whatever
Oh,
road you're
no,
gonna. Yeah.
no, say more, Ramon.
Well, a part of my question had to do with teachers who have potentially sensitive skill sets that have the potential to be abused in the wrong hands. And if you put it out there without being able to monitor who it's given to, and what they might be able to do with it. I suppose my questioning was along those lines, even though what you answered and all that was still enlightening in regards to that.
Okay, let's take, for example, Ericksonian hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming. They are very dangerous tools in the wrong hands. I could go, I'm not going to talk about that because these are dangerous. But anybody can go to a library and check out the books by the people who came up with this stuff and read them and recreate the stuff. It's there already. And we've seen people do that. I mean, the whole pickup artist movement was started by a guy who learned some NLP and some Ericksonian hypnosis and figured out that he could manipulate girls into sleeping with him. And he made a fortune teaching people how to do that for a year or two. So what do you do with that? Back when that started happening, I started teaching courses, women only, on how to combat that kind of manipulation, how to notice it, how to install the subroutines in your own mind that would go, oh, wait a second, that guy just negged me. What is he trying to do? Negging is one of the traditional techniques that these guys use, where you use negative comments to make a person want to prove to you that they are not that. When I was doing those groups, they were incredibly successful because everybody needed them. Word got around, and the pickup artist stuff stopped working as well. So what you can do to combat the potential for abuse is to inoculate people against it. It's the only thing I can really think of, because everything is already out there.
Especially now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like these are tomes that are locked up in the Vatican or something. This is stuff that's out there now.
Yep. The Necronomicon is now a PDF.
Thanks. That answers my question. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Jonathan, any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I had one thought that in order for this open source learning to work, I'm thinking that we have to be really clear about what our aim in life is, so we can discern whether a piece of information or an exercise that I'm receiving is helping me get closer to my aim or not.
Jonathan, that is really smart and absolutely correct. In order to do the work, you have to have that aim. You have to have the big goal, the thing that's going to take your entire life to do. And you have to be very clear on what it is and what it isn't. So my goal, for instance, in sports was to become a moderately adept fencer. Actually, I wanted to become the greatest fencer on the planet. Still working on that. May never get there, but that told me that I am not going to involve myself in other things, like I'm not going to do jujitsu, right? Cool sport. It's not what I'm focused on. I don't want to take time away from where I'm going to go off on some side trip.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key there, is that
Yeah.
when we talk about the focus of attention, this is part of what we're getting at, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not frittering away your energy with 10,000 distracting things that may or may not benefit you.
Yeah.
And
So
it's okay to try things, right? It's okay to
Yeah.
explore, but once you have a more mature sense of what really matters to you, what really motivates you, I think that's when what you're talking about, Jonathan, fully comes to the fore.
Yeah, in Brian's example, it would simply be, I need my computer problem fixed, and that's why I'm here on the to get it fixed.
Yeah. But why do you need your computer problem fixed? What are you going to use your computer for?
I'm going to, I'm trying to expand my understanding of life and myself.
Yeah. So there, that gives you a better view on the ultimate goal. Everybody needs an ultimate goal, an almost impossible, can't really achieve it goal.
It's like a desire,
Yeah.
what's your deepest desire kind of thing.
But, and the thing is, once you have that, you have to go, what steps do I need to do to get there? And you start backtracking until you go, next week I need to do this. Next month I need to do that. And you keep doing those and you calibrate every time you work on the closer goals. You recalibrate and go, is this getting me closer to my ultimate goal? So I might take up ballet for a while because it will improve my balance and my gracefulness, because you got to look good when you have a sword in your hand. You can't just swing it around. You got to look good when you're swinging it. So I could do ballet for a while, but I don't get lost in becoming a ballet dancer. That is just a step towards my ultimate goal.
Yep. Thank you, Jonathan. Did you have any question you wanted to ask, or you feel like?
That's all I wanted to add.
All right, that was
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Cherie, you're moving around.
I don't really have anything to add. I'm just thinking about all the experiences that I have in watching people close to me get deceived by people they really trust and really put their, I suppose, their emotional heart in. And when you're doing in this kind of work, you're laying yourself open, and it's pretty tough when someone that you've trusted has taken advantage of that. And it's about staying awake as much as possible. And sometimes we can get pretty dense about things.
Oh yeah.
We just had a friend who's just been deceived by someone, and again, not the first time. And I'm thinking about how we lay our trust in someone because we have an ambition or an ideal that exceeds our common sense. What is that about? So how do we go to sleep so easily? And I know this girl is not a stupid person. That's like, whoa, a really hard thing. And we're always trying to keep that awareness open. We always should question. We should always challenge that. Things that have been told us, the things that you tell me, and we have discussions and things. That's where we get our lively topics and things. Why is that? Why should I accept that? Or what, isn't that an interesting question? And it's looking at the world in that different way. Wow, yeah, I like that sound.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but we've been through another natural disaster in Australia, and some places have received their annual rainfall in 1 week, and it's massive flooding, and the things that they're talking about, like they've run out of white goods, they've run out of mattresses, they've run out of everything to help these people rebuild. And we're so far away from everybody else that those who are desperate will become vulnerable. And I think those who are desperately seeking some kind of enlightenment, wisdom, whatever, can be vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, that's partly why we talked about this in kind of like when you're in a position of, I'm going to use the word elder because we're trying to get around this sense of like hierarchy, right? So just someone who holds maybe a bit more wisdom relative to the situation. We've talked in this group about people who are looking for a safe harbor. Like maybe at first they're very enthusiastic about being part of the community and it's this new shiny thing for them. We know, relatively speaking, that we are probably a safer place for them to hang out until they figure out where they really need to be. You know, they can just get their yayas out and be enthusiastic and like, wow, this new shiny thing, without getting hooked in the way that they may elsewhere, where you have a teacher who's just like, okay, I need to get this person to stay and they can't leave because now they're part of my following and I can't let them go. And that's out there too.
Yeah. One of the coolest things I ever saw was my teacher, my last one. People would come to him and he would look at them and they'd say, I want to be your student. And he would look at them and he'd say, but you're not my student.
Yeah.
You're welcome to stay here and we will care for you. We will teach you until you find your teacher. But this is not me. And he would do that more often than he would accept a student. And
Yeah.
some people hung around for a year or two before they found where they needed to be. And some people went off in a huff. But that kind of integrity I have rarely seen in the spiritual world, where people in the room represent your income. For him, it was never the income. He never cared about that. He cared about, go ahead.
Yeah, he cared about what did you want to say? He cared about
them as spiritual beings and their development. And he
right.
knew that he wasn't the guy to bring them where they needed to go.
Yeah. So in our case, given that we are, at least for the time being, we're primarily online. So we're not giving workshops publicly and then having people come up to us like, oh my God, pick me. I have to be your student. Please. Like perhaps down the road, that will be something that we have to address more specifically. But for the time being, it's mostly people just coming and going and being enthusiastic and then realizing, oh,
Yeah, you're
figure
here, you're
this
there,
out.
you're gone.
Yeah.
It is a friendship circle.
What's that?
I see this as a friendship circle.
Yeah.
And so, when you say there's no hierarchy, there's a friendship circle. So I've had interactions with some of the people on this screen. And if I can help, I can help. I don't see myself as an elder. No, I'm going
But you are. I mean,
but I'm going to be 60.
Yes.
You're a
Yes.
junior elder, but you're an elder. You're just barely an elder.
Barely. So
And-
I see it more as a support, like I'm a
Yeah.
support person. When someone's giving birth, they've got a support person. They don't have an elder, but
I think we cringe at that word because we feel that it has like ageist connotations. But we need to understand that you can be an elder at any age,
Yes.
It's one of those things where
Nora looks 16.
And yet I do have a quality of eldership to me that I have earned through my learning and my experience.
I can bring a life experience to something. I can share something I've learned with someone else, and there's no having tit for tat sort of thing. I prefer people to pay forward, or if I ask them of something, they could help me out in another way.
Yes.
So it's much more friendship circle.
Yeah, Levita has a really good way of putting it. She says it's like, all of us are people who are on the road together, and an elder or elders are people who are a little further down the road than oneself.
Yep. And we saw an example of that before we went live on video when Levita was talking with Sydney.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. We aren't even going to tell you what they were talking about, but that was an example of true eldership.
Yes. Yeah.
You can wonder.
Thank you, Shuri. Yeah.
And speaking of Sydney,
Yeah, Sydney, let's check in with you. What are you thinking about? What's coming up for you?
I have a question for after.
Sure. For after.
okay, we'll wait. We'll wait till
Mysteries
you're offline.
abound. Yeah, sure. Do you have anything
Then-
you want to share beforehand, or you just want to hold it there and we'll follow up afterwards?
I'm good.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zainab John, what do you think?
Many good questions and answers there on the table. I don't have anything to add or ask. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see your face. It's good to see all your faces, but I feel like Zainab is just so far away. All right.
Yeah.
Levita, how about you?
This is another week where, I just came to listen, and I feel like I really need to scan my house for the cameras and the listening devices, because this is another week where literally I am going through and dealing with something that this topic is spot on. So I'm checking the back of my brain for the jack. Like, I don't know what you're doing, man.
Is there anything you can share or that you'd like to share?
Well,
Experience?
because the situation is actually on the interwebs, I can only share it privately. But it like right in the right.
Mm.
Yeah, we'll talk after we shut everything down.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry to hear that though.
But yeah, but it's not so terrible. It's just one of those things where you go, yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad this is resonating at the very least. You're not alone in whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just get out of my house, y'all.
Sorry. We're not leaving.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck with us. We like you.
Thanks, Levita. Mr. Keem, how about you? I know you did have a good question earlier. I was just curious if you had anything you might like to add. You're good? Okay. McQueen.
That's everybody.
No, we should hear from Nancy and McQueen before we head
You've
out.
heard from me. Everything's fine over here.
Awesome.
Okay, good.
Yay. How about you,
Then we
Nancy?
have Nancy.
Oh, you're muted. And do this.
She doesn't realize
Can't
she's
hear you now.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, just a little thing of a good example. I read about an Aikido teacher who didn't give out belts because he found that with belts, the white belts perform below their capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah.
Yep.
There was one time when I had a Silat school with a friend, and he always wore the black belt, and I always wore the white belt, even though we were both teachers.
mm-hmm.
And that did a couple of things. One, when people came in to try and challenge us, it's like, oh, fight this white belt. But the other was that it showed people that you don't have to have a rank.
It's, where the rubber meets the road, what happens.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I might even train them to look at people.
That's the thing, right? I mean, think twice before you assume. Well, I mean, that goes in my case too, right? And people have an expectation of me when they see me, but at some point along the way, they either are pleasantly surprised or, we
Realize
have
that they're
difficult conversations. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you are easy to underestimate
right.
for people who
And
don't pay attention.
as we said earlier, that's both a curse and a blessing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Great point, Nancy.
All right. Let's wrap this up for the evening and shut down the recording and switch to
Brady Bunch mode.
Brady Bunch mode. There we all are. A couple of people had to go early, but here is all us. Wave goodbye, everybody.
Queen waves to all of you. We wave to all of you. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.